Good evening, Shore Conference football fans. It's another season of the Varsity Link Coaches Corner here on the Shore Sports Network. Glad to be back for another year talking Shore Conference football. We're here at the home base of the Coaches Corner, Asylum Sports Center in Wall, and we've got a lot to talk about. It's our season debut. Excited to be here. Going to go through some of the Week 0 matchups, look ahead to Week 1, but the bulk of this, we're going to go through the divisions, give our thoughts, and see how it plays out, I guess, several weeks down the road. I'm glad football season's here because a couple Yankee fans on this set and one Mets fan, it has not been the best of summers for baseball. So excited to be back. Bob Batters, your host, alongside Scott Stump and the coach, Ed Sarluca. And guys, first of all, I haven't seen you in a while. Luch, how's your summer been? You ready for another year?
I got the nice tan working, a lot of time on the beach, in the pool.
Ed looks like Panama Jack, in the middle of the summer. There's no tanner. Maybe Joe Arminio is the only one who can beat you with the tan now.
Yeah, right.
Joe looks good. And the Stumper, Scott Stump, longtime Shore Conference sports reporter. Not too many know more about Shore Conference sports and football in general. So, Scott, good to have you on.
Yeah, it's good to be back in the fold. I was kind of, out of the mix there for a couple of years. So, yeah, it's good to be back doing Shore Conference football again. Already got out to a game this past week, big Week 0. How much that has grown has obviously changed a lot just in the last couple of years. This year was the biggest Week 0 of them all. But it was great to already get to find out so much more about these teams and, potential new stars in the Shore Conference. That's always the fun thing. Who are the guys we didn't know about who are going to be breakout players? So, yeah, I'm looking forward to breaking down all these divisions and talking about all of it.
Yeah, a lot to get to because Week 0 this season is, just call it Week 1. I've said that a bunch of times. 27 of our 42 teams played in Week 0, so it's not a few teams are going to get out there and get an early jump on the season, maybe play a showcase. It's the start of the season, so a lot to break down, which we've done throughout the week. Shore Sports Network podcast, Scott and I really took a look at some of these games. But, Ed, I want to get your thoughts. Week 0, what stood out to you from the big slate?
Well, the first thing I like to say about Week 0, I definitely do not think the teams were ready to play in Week 0.
At least not in all phases, right?
Exactly. It was too short a time period from the beginning of practice, even though a lot of teams practice early on. But equipment-wise, they were limited to when they could put the pads on. I just don't think it was ready. I saw 2 or 3 or 4 games, and on video and also live, and the teams were multiple penalties, by both teams. And, of course, the weather, as Scott and I were talking before, one cramp after another in the second half, and the games were taking 3.5 hours to play. I just don't think it's a good idea to play Week 0. I think Week 1 should be the first week of the season.
I agree in some aspects, but to get to an overall state championship game, right, I'll take it. So, but I do understand that first week it's not, a lot of teams are working through some things. For some perspective, during your coaching days, when did you start practice?
Well,
usually?
Remember, I'm a dinosaur, so we started September.
When the leather helmets arrived in the mail.
Well, that's going back to when? September 1st was the start of practice in the 80s? Still the 90s?
Late 70s and 80s.
When did it start to creep and earlier into August?
When guys like Lou Versillo and John Amabile were coaching, everybody used to start a little bit earlier, and then it became June when teams started
chasing
to practice,
the rabbit,
which is what it is now. You could start to practice, with your 7-on-7s and everything, and immediately after the last state playoff game. That's the rule right now, and teams do it. Monmouth University had a 7-on-7 tournament with 80 teams. Yeah. Rutgers had a 7-on-7 with over 100 teams from all over the state and other states. Too much, I think.
That's an overarching conversation for another day, how youth athletics has become, all encompassing and all year. But to Ed's point, it's just how much the landscape has changed. Like, can you imagine starting practice September 1st? There are teams that will have played 2 games before September 1st this year.
Yep.
And honestly, we got lucky that the weather wasn't worse. Could have been 95 degrees, 100 degrees in August a lot of times. And we got fairly mild weather. It was muggy, but I'm just wondering what's going to happen one of these years when it is 100 degrees or 95
I
degrees.
think we're going to get
season's
hit this weekend, Scott, right? The temperature is supposed to go up near 90 this week.
Listen, as long as the bugs aren't as bad as they were.
They
this
were
weekend.
bad. They were bad everywhere on Friday, that's for sure.
The swamp lived up to its name on Friday night. A couple other ones we'll talk about from week 0. We'll go down real quick some of the top teams. Number 1, Toms River North, a huge 14-7 non-conference victory over Millville down at the Battle of the Beach in Ocean City. That's the Group 5 champ North beating the Group 4 champ Millville from last season, the 2 top-ranked public schools in New Jersey. Huge early season win for Toms River North. Red Bank Catholic in an equally as difficult or more difficult game, you can say, for sure, against number 1 Bergen Catholic. Scott, you were at that game. Just Bergen Catholic too much. Casey's, you saw some areas they have to work on. Long season, they're going to be really good, but that was a very tough matchup for them to take week 0.
Yeah, I think we'll find out more about them this week against Colts Neck. The big thing with them was they could not run the ball at all on them, which is very rare for RBC. They had 60 yards rushing the whole game. The first half was minus rushing for a while. They didn't even have a first down until the final minute of the half. They hadn't completed a pass until the final minute of the half. So to me, it was really the offense just trying to get in gear. And again, I think part of that is Bergen Catholic is going to make a lot of teams look really bad. Their front 7 is the fastest group that you're probably going to see in the state. Their D linemen are running down quarterbacks and running backs from behind, who are breaking the pocket or getting outside. So it's hard to decipher to some degree how much of it is that RBC might struggle a little bit and how much is it that Bergen Catholic, the number 1 team in the state, nationally ranked, is just that good. But I think the one surprising thing was RBC usually has the stud tailback, the number 1 guy. Ben Sabino Portella the last couple of years. That has not been sorted out yet. It was very much by committee in that game. Jamie Guttridge scored their 1 touchdown, a junior. I could see him potentially emerging, but they're still trying to work it out as far as who's going to be that number 1 guy. Frankie Williams, the quarterback, settled down, I thought, a little bit more in the second half. But I think we'll find out a lot more against Colts Neck this week, which is coached by their old friend, yes, Matt Ahern, the former offensive coordinator of RBC for a long time. Now done a great job at Colts Neck. They're coming off that loss to Point Borough that you were actually at. The Borough looked great in their season opener.
Yeah, their flex bone triple option is unique in that it can hit home runs and hit big plays at any time. We knew that with quarterback Matt Oliphant and running back Jay Croce. We also saw they have an outstanding freshman, Jay Clayton, who had 2 touches on offense, 2 touchdowns, a 31-yard touchdown run, and a big 77-yard kickoff return for a touchdown in the second half that really sparked Point Borough. 21-point third quarter, put the game away. So now you're talking about a third guy that can take it the distance anytime he touches the ball. Makes that offense very dangerous. And their defense, despite giving up 146 yards to Chris Scully, Colts Neck's outstanding senior running back. The defense looked pretty good. They were opportunistic, made some plays behind the line of scrimmage, had an interception. So Point Borough looking real good to start off. I want to go back real quick to the Bergen Catholic game because it's always, sometimes you get on the field next to athletes and you're like, doesn't look like a real person.
I know you're
and
going to
they have
ask
one of the
about.
biggest human beings you're ever going to see at the high school level.
Yeah, Nair Daniels is one of their mega recruits. He's 6'8" and 315 pounds. He has offers from Georgia and anybody else you could think of in the country. And yes, I've covered, a million games over 20 years. Rarely have you just been it looks like an NFL player got dropped into the middle of a high school game. I remember I sent you the picture, showed you the picture. He said it looks like Larry Allen, the old all-pro lineman for the Dallas Cowboys. That was not a matchup I'm sure anybody was eager to line up against him. But that was one of those wow, they got some guys on this team that are just on a whole other level.
Well, if you're talking about size, we got to mention Jalen Matthews from Toms River North.
He's only a junior,
he's only a junior,
too.
and
if he grows
what's he, 6'7"?
6'7",
close to 3.
Under 300 pounds. Yeah,
close to 3, and he can move. Dominant performance against Millville. I think he was the reason why they actually won that game. Micah Ford gets all the ink, but Jalen Matthews is a force, and nobody's going to be able to handle him.
And on both sides of the ball, too.
Right, I think that's what surprised people. We know him as an offensive lineman, but at D tackle, he had multiple sacks and was really disruptive.
And he showed that last season. He played on defense last season. they rotate some guys in and out, but he came up in some big moments. I remember, I believe it was their playoff game against Edison, and he jumped up, tipped the pass, intercepted it, and then like detonated some poor kid on the team who tried to tackle him. And yeah, it's just he's an FBS recruit for a reason, and they're going to have him on the field as much as they can. Why wouldn't it make sense?
You know, I actually feel sorry for some of the secondary players for Toms River North because
hard to crack that lineup.
Micah Ford and Jalen Matthews are going to get all the ink, you know, this fall. But they have some outstanding Division I, you know, Division II players.
They do.
Council and, you know,
Pruitt.
the running back,
Josh
Pruitt,
Moore.
Josh Moore.
Yeah.
I mean,
You could list
a
their
lot of
entire
talent.
roster.
A lot of
Boland
talent.
had multiple sacks in the first game.
Right,
I mean,
right.
they got guys that would be stars on another team that are kind
They
of
would
more
be.
under the radar on
Yep.
their side.
And they also
Correct.
have another 6'7", 300-pound tackle in senior Justin Kay. So yeah, it doesn't end for North. An awesome season opening win. You know, they're going to be in a bunch of battles in that American division. So we're going to see them plenty more times this season. The game you were at, Ed, was Brick Memorial, you know, putting up, you know, some
Huge
more cricket
numbers.
numbers, 51-25 over Allentown. The Connor Dietz show continues. You know, we're not surprised at this point because he's done it now for 2 straight seasons, but it's still impressive to watch when he has one of those games where he has almost 400 yards of offense by himself.
Yeah, last year an all-shore player, a well-deserved, tremendous athlete and tremendous effort on Friday night. I mean, he did whatever he wanted. He threw. He didn't have to throw too many times, but when he did, it was an 80-yard touchdown pass. He ran for close to 300 yards. He just does it on both sides of the ball. But can Memorial and can Connor Dietz do it against the outstanding teams? That's what we have to see this year, because he certainly could do it probably inside of the independence schedule that they play.
The last game from week 0 I want to talk about was a top 5 matchup, and that was Rumson Fairhaven, number 5 at the time, going into the Swamp and beating number 3 Middletown South. 2 big storylines from that game were Owen O'Toole, the outstanding junior quarterback from Rumson, just having a great day, and Rumson showing off another really good receiver in Nick Thomas, who had a big game. And then the injury to Middletown South quarterback Jake Zwakiel, had a big run early in the first quarter, left the game, did not return. And he's their quarterback, their best defensive back, their kicker, their punter. That was obviously a tough blow, and Rumson came away with a 24-6 victory. You talked to head coach Steve Antonucci from Middletown South. You know, they're hoping to get Zwakiel back sooner than later, but a lot of unanswered questions.
Yeah,
right
he
now.
called it a work in progress as far as like whether he will play against Raritan. It seems like a game time decision on that one, so we just don't know. I mean, obviously the injury was enough for him to come out and not return in a game they really needed to, you know, against a big time opponent. So it must be, you know, not just some mild ankle injury, you know, it must be something slow. And the toughest part with him is that's like losing 4 players.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, you're losing one of the top defensive backs in the Shore, you're losing one of the top kickers in the Shore, and you're losing your starting punter in addition to a playmaking quarterback. So I think that really, you know, hurts because it's not just you're trying to fill one position, you're now trying to fill 4 positions. And as far as the other storyline you talked about, we talked about Owen O'Toole a ton in the preseason. He led the Shore Conference in passing yards last year, and he just looks like now he's just picking right up where he left off.
So that's week 0 in a nutshell. If you want to dive deeper into that, make sure you check out the Shore Sports Network podcast. Scott and I broke down pretty much every game from week 0, and also the scoreboard, CV Jeep scoreboard, where you know, we have the breakdowns and the recaps from all those games from week 0. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll start breaking down these divisions and kind of see what we think, see who's going to come out on top, and you know, make some predictions that are bound to fail. You're watching and listening to the Varsity Link Coach's Corner on the Shore Sports Network.
Getting that perfect slice is satisfying, fulfilling, and rewarding too. But we don't do it for fun. We do it for fresh. Slice to order makes a sub above.
back here at Asylum Sports Center in Wall, the season debut of the 2023 Varsity Link Coaches Corner, talking Shore Conference football alongside Scott Stump and Ed Sarluca. So week 0 in the books, and now we're really going to turn the page. But right now we're going to just an overarching decision on the divisions. So we have some changes. So we're just going to go through. We're going to start with the American division, the top division. And when you look at that, it's a juggernaut division. Toms River North, Red Bank Catholic, Donovan Catholic, Rumson, Fairhaven, Middletown South, and Wall. So you have Red Bank Catholic, the division champion last season. You have Toms North, which came into the division after dominating the Colonial division, going 14-0, winning the state title. A Rumson team that was in the Group 2 final, and on we go. So it's a beastly division. You're splitting hairs with a lot of these teams. The games are going to be great. We're going to try to figure it all out right now. So, Ed, when you look at that division, what's the first thing that kind of jumps out?
Well, it's about time they got North up into that
Yeah,
division.
right.
That's for sure. I honestly thought that maybe Wall should have dropped down a division. I think that's really the only team that is going to have trouble contending with this other
The hard
team.
part is who else do you put in?
Yeah,
at that
well,
point?
whatever. But Toms River North, you got to favor them for sure, just on past history and the talent they have on the field. But, I mean, there's going to be – I do not think somebody will go undefeated this year in that division.
It's a tough ask.
Because you got Donovan Catholic up there. I mean, tough, still remains to be seen how good they are. Rumson, as you said, RBC. But I look for North to prevail.
Is there a specific game between those teams you're looking? I mean, they're all good. Is there a specific one?
Well, I
you're
believe
looking
it's
forward to?
week 3, right, is Rumson and North?
Yeah.
That's a good one.
They all
a good
are.
one, yeah.
I mean, it's
That's a good early season one.
there's been, when you went back to the older divisions, the classic A North, A South, et cetera, or even when they were, the name divisions, but were a little bit more spread out, there were years where you were like, well, this division's great this year. We can just cover this every week. It really is that with that division. On any,
Yeah, I mean, you got a top
day.
10 matchup every single weekend.
Yeah.
You could have a reporter whose sole job is dedicated to just covering the American division the whole season. I think the biggest question for me is, if we're saying Toms River North is number 1 in that division, I agree. I mean, they're 14-0. Last year they brought so many guys back. They have the reigning state player of the year. They deserve that distinction. Who is the main team that's going to make a run at them? In other words, is Donovan or Rumson going to leapfrog RBC as like that number 2 team to set up the showdown with them? Like, which game will we look back on and say, oh, that was for the division title, or will it build up to one? I think that, to me, is an interesting question just because RBC has, a few question marks on offense, I guess, as after the Bergen Catholic game. But again, we don't know if that's just because of the caliber of the opponent. But last year, Donovan Catholic took care of Rumson pretty handily.
Yeah, shut them out.
And then Middletown South beat Rumson last year, but now Rumson's already avenged that loss. So, the question to me is, can Donovan Catholic, Ed, do you think they can take that leap to where they're good, but can they go all the way to number 1 and take down the teams in their way?
Well, that remains to be seen. This division, it could very well come down to the last week.
Yeah.
RBC and North play.
It absolutely could.
Now, do you think it helps them or hurts them that they have to run this whole gauntlet before they get to the state playoffs?
Yeah, well, I think it hurts them.
Because if
personally.
you could be pretty banged up getting into the postseason,
that's the part.
trying to make it through one of these. And if you have an injury, you almost feel like you're rushing the kid back to play if you want to keep pace in this division. Because if you don't, you probably are taking a couple losses if he doesn't play for a week or 2.
You're right. Good to see. We've got some viewers on Instagram Live. We saw Marlboro standout Matt Cassidy jump on there. So
Yeah, we got some all shore guys on this thing.
we love to see it. Best of luck to all you guys coming up, especially teams that are opening up this weekend. But back to the American Division, I think North answered. They answered a lot of questions. How many questions really were there? There's a couple, but they played great defensively last season, which was the offense had all the headlines. How could it not with what it accomplished, with what Micah Ford did and everything? Their defense was quietly the number 1 scoring defense in the Shore, and everyone knew that the schedule wasn't the same as the American Division teams last year, but they did it in their biggest games in the playoffs. So they proved it then. They really proved it against a loaded Millville team offensively which didn't score until about 9 minutes left in the fourth quarter.
Right.
So you can do that against them. You can hold a lot of teams down, and they prove they can win a low-scoring game. They put up a bunch of yards. Micah Ford ran for 177 yards. Josh Moore around 125. So they did the job offensively. If they're going to play like that week in, week out, they're going to win a lot more games than they lose, and they've proven they don't have to score 30-plus points a game to win.
Right. That's, to me, the biggest takeaway from that game. A day where we don't necessarily have it on offense, we can beat a reigning group champion that brings back almost everybody, and they slow down an offense that has Latsier Brooks, one of the top wide receiver recruits in New Jersey. I think that to me is a big takeaway for, man, we didn't even necessarily, like you said, you talked to Coach Dave Osowitz, and he was like, we didn't really play our best.
Yeah.
And we still beat, we still have
Offensively,
still have a better win than any other team in New Jersey after week 0.
It's really impressive what they were able to do. Now, again, it's a very long season, and part of the issue playing in that American division is the attrition. I think if you talk to all of those coaches, they love the competition. That's not the part that they're concerned about. It's you. At the end of the day, you want to win division championships, sure, but you're playing, those teams at least are playing to have success in the state playoffs. They're chasing state championships. So if you go through a regular season and you get out of there, through that division, and you're so banged up it affects your playoffs, like you'd rather just play in a division where you have maybe 1 or 2 tough games. So I think that's the catch-22 there for them, because you're going to have a great seed in the playoffs because your power points, your strength of schedule is going to be outstanding. So it helps you in that regard, but it can also hurt you if you're not healthy. Last year, a lot of the American Division teams were a little bit banged up. RBC was mostly healthy. I thought so was Rumson. North, their starters were out of the game in halftime almost every week.
That's the biggest thing I think is the difference this year. You're going to play 4 quarters every week if you're them. And I think the other thing is North, I'm not going to say got away with, they were dominant, but they were totally run heavy last year too. They were a pretty one-dimensional. Michael Ford can throw the ball. He's made plays in the air, but it's hard to beat teams like RBC and Donovan and teams like that where like you're running the ball 80% of the time.
Throw it when you want to instead of throw it when you have to. It's a big difference.
Yeah, I have one more question about that, North.
Ask away.
Did they go on any of the rides after the game on the boardwalk?
The Ferris wheel?
That is a unique field, by the way.
There's the height, like the minimums. Like I don't know, Jalen Matthews. Are they gonna,
he can't get on anything.
Him and Justin Kane. Are they even allowed to get it? Yeah. Excuse me, young man. Like you're just way too tall. Like the Ferris wheel cannot accommodate you.
That's a unique situation. I've played there a few times.
You talking about Cary Field at Ocean City?
Yes. Yeah. The far goalpost is about 20 yards from the actual boardwalk. And in the cold weather, that wind whips off the ocean.
It's tough.
It's hard to play
I'll tell you what, it's tough in the playoffs, and it's tough for any early season lacrosse games.
Right.
It is cold down there, but it's such a great venue.
Right.
That Battle of the Beach, I was not down there this season, but the past 2 seasons I was. They do a really good job, really cool event to cover. At night, it's great because you're on the visiting sideline, and you got the Ferris wheel all lit up in the background.
Right.
I've never covered a game at Union City, which has an extremely unique stadium where the football field is on the roof of the school.
Yes. Right.
But for my money, those 2 high school stadiums are pretty awesome and very unique. And if you have a chance to get to either one in New Jersey, you should definitely do it. The flip side to that, and we're talking about North and teams contending, if you're Wall, like you know what you're up against. You were in that division last season. You beat Manalapan late in the season to avoid finishing in last. Manalapan gets replaced by North, so you're there. And we're not. Wall's a solid team. They took a loss to Manalapan, but you're up against it every week, and that's a tough one because you're a good team that's probably not going to get recognized for being as good as you are because of the competition.
Well, and it puts such a premium on your non-divisional games. Like you basically have to win them because
to have a shot at the playoffs.
That's the thing, because I think Wall feels like, playing the schedule we play, if we're in the playoffs, we could be 2-6, but be an actual threat.
Yes.
Because, we played so many difficult teams that the teams we're going to see in our bracket aren't going to be on that level. So I think their feeling is like, if we could just get in, we could really surprise some people and show that like our record is not indicative of our talent. But losing that Manalapan game is tough because that puts you behind the 8 ball where they play Howell this week. To me, that's an absolutely like must-have game for them playoff-wise. So, yeah, you're right. They're never going to back down from a challenge. Edgar Airy runs a program that will take on anybody, but they've got dealt a pretty tough hand the last couple of years, and I'll be interested to see what happens if they have another tough season this year, if they end up moving out and someone comes up and replaces them this year. But still a lot of football to play. We'll see.
And
about
that's a big question at the American division. The theme for me as we go down these divisions is they're all very even. Going through writing all these previews and just trying to break them down briefly, they're all very even, all of them. And that's the goal of the short conference realignment. So I believe it has really worked in that sense. Now, not everyone is happy with them. You're never going to make all 42 coaches and programs happy, but I think it's pretty good. In that American division, it seems like you're always going to have that 6th team that kind of belongs but kind of doesn't with the rest of those ones. What do they do in the future? Like if it's not Wall this year, who else is it? That would make sense. And it's, you're not gonna put.
Well, it starts to become like, is the Colonial division champion or whatever?
Just get
that's like
by
it's
default?
gets moved up. Like your reward for having a great season is to now get put against a bunch of other
Throw you into
powers
the
in the
lion's
short
den.
conference. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I don't know. I mean, there's definitely been a lot of debate among the coaches themselves of whether they like this alignment or whether they like divisions that are more like, okay, you have 2 or 3 good teams at the top and then kind of the teams behind, and they're a little bit more balanced. But I mean, we'll see. But I look at like this Colonial division, and to me, that's a really exciting race. Like you could pick 4 of those teams, 3 or 4 of those teams, and make a really good argument right off the bat that like one of them is a good shot to win it all.
You could, and you go down the list. You have Point Borough, which was a division champ and a playoff team last year that finished 9-1. You have Long Branch, that was a playoff team, had a big upset over Pennsauken, I believe it was, in the first round, got to the semifinals. A Manalapan team that we just talked about was 3-7, but played such a good schedule, made the playoffs, and lost by 3 to Jackson. A Raritan team that been in 2 straight sectional finals. A Red Bank regional team that's coming back up under head coach Shane Fallon, won 7 games, and a Colts Neck team that's been in the playoffs and been very consistent under Matt Ahern. So that is a division that is, while not the American division, is really good and really balanced. And that is another one where I think it's, like watching a tennis match. It's like just when you think you have a handle on who is taking the lead in the division, there's going to be a game that kind of throws it on its ear.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's very even. And, the objective of the short conference scheduling committee was to look at last season's record and try to determine who's coming back and try to make it an even division in each case. And, for the most part, they did do that right. I mean, I could probably pick one team in each division that doesn't belong there, maybe drop down 1 or whatever, or drop up 1. But, for the most part, they got it right. And I think even scheduling.
Yeah, juggling the amount of teams we have and the fact that they're so spread between – we have really good Group 5 and Group 1, Group 2, like at all groups. So trying to fit that puzzle together is not easy. I know.
Yeah, this Colonial division is a little strange, though, when you have Raritan and Point Borough as Group 2s playing up against, much bigger schools, Manalapan, Long Branch, Colts. So, but like Ed said, it's more matched by ability. We just saw Point Borough as a Group 2 team, and they took it to Colts.
They belong there.
Yeah. So they showed, we are absolutely a contender to win this division title. To me, that was an early separation game, too, that kind of told you, all right, Borough is what we thought they were going to be. And I was also, we talked about Manalapan, I was also impressed by Long Branch going up to Piscataway, running for almost 400 yards right off the bat against a good Middlesex team. That's another team that I think we're going to find out a lot more about them this week against Donovan Catholic, but I would put them right there as a contender to win this division.
I think you'd have to. Interesting to me is the contrast of styles offensively. You look at these teams. You have a Point Borough team that runs a triple option, but it's not your typical ball control triple option. It's we want to hit some 65-yard touchdowns,
right?
And they've done it with regularity the last 2-3 years, and they did it 3 times. In the win over Colts, like they had 3 touchdowns over 55 yards, which is hard to defend. Not to mention that they can also put together those 12 to 15 play drives if you let them. So you have a Long Branch team that has ran the ball really well against Piscataway, because we've talked about this. When they have a good offensive line, they are a bear to deal with, and the early returns on that are good. Ernest Reevy, their standout senior quarterback, had a big game on the ground. Zaheem Brown, don't forget, they get a transfer back starting after 4 weeks. Davon Kraft, who is at Neptune, So you add another big-time back to that, and that makes that interesting. Manalapan and Colts Neck, more physical, grinded out, balanced teams.
Right.
Red Bank, a little bit in that mold, and then a Raritan team that Raritan lost a lot, but Raritan, usually runs the ball really well and just finds ways.
They're
to
hard
make plays.
nosed. They compete, but it's not going to be easy to replace Kieran Falzone. I mean, he had the most rushing yards of any running back in the Shore Conference last year. I was at that game against Rumson. That was a heartbreaker in the sectional final, but he was incredible. Like, that's one of the best games in school history. He was well over 300 yards rushing. He did everything he could to try to get that title at the end. But you're right. That's a team that just because of who they lost and they're trying to replace, there's more question marks about them. I mean, they're probably a little bit lower down, but they're Raritan. They always battle you. They always are going to give you a tough game. So I think this division does not have that, weak link. Oh my gosh, this team's not going to be able to compete with anybody. That's why I think they've done a good job of putting teams together that are going to really duke it out. Like, would you be shocked if there's a co-champs or tri-champs in this kind of division?
Not at all.
Two things, Bob. Number one, we're a half hour into the show. First time I heard the word transfer from you. I mean, which was obviously a big topic over the winter. So many kids have transferred, not basically just in the Shore, but
everywhere.
An entire state. If you look at, the articles that were written, I mean, top-notch talent going from one school to the other, which opened up the transfer rules this year.
Yeah, that's the nature of high school sports today. And look, we're not going to glorify it, nor will we demonize it. We just report it, and it is what it is.
What it's made it do is it's made coaches have to re-recruit their own team at the end of the year. Can I keep these players intact? And I think you're seeing more, too, where, say it's a quarterback battle and one kid loses out, the other kid gets the starting spot. It's almost like college. You hit the transfer portal. Okay, the minute I'm not going to start, I'll go find a school where I can.
I wonder, and not to get too deep in this topic, but I wonder if that kind of, regresses to the mean, you could say, where it's happened in college football, where the grass isn't always greener. These players will leave, and that better opportunity doesn't exist. And now they're without a scholarship, different at that level with the scholarships, but now they're without a team. So, like, you can't play that game too much, really, and just bounce around. And
but I think you're going to see more of these, well, this kid has played for 4 high schools in 4 years kind of thing. And I just don't know how good that is for the game. But kids are trying to do the best for their own career. But, yeah, I think it's just a really tricky situation because now it just feels like at the end of every season, you have to assess who's going to be on our team next year, especially at a public school. Are all these guys going to come back? Like, I was almost impressed by Toms River North that they retained all of those players.
You're right.
But I think part of it is if you're getting the offers you want to get at your school, like Jalen Matthews is committed to Penn State. Like what better was it going to get somewhere else? So I mean,
and you're on a great team,
and you're on a team that went undefeated and won a state title. So yeah, I think that's part of it too. But I think you're going to see kids wanting to leave for better opportunities, and like you said, they might not always be there. We don't know, and I think the other kind of crazy thing that's developed, not to go too far in this, is like how far teams are searching for talent. Like one of the starting D-backs for Bergen Catholic, which is all the way in Oradell, was from Freehold Borough. So, I mean, like that's how far these bigger teams are sort of scouring the state and beyond for players.
It's Don Bosco Prep now. Their quarterback is Devin Sisler, who was at Central last season. So you're right. It's just a completely different landscape.
One more thing about Point Borough.
Yes.
I think they play this season in this division with a grudge on their shoulders because of the way they lost in the final, in the state playoffs.
And they are one of those teams that have welcomed a bigger challenge with open arms.
Yes.
And talking to their head coach, Brian Staub, look, they'd love to run the table in the regular season and go into the playoffs hot, but they would much rather be battle-tested, whatever that means their record is. Look, everyone wants to be healthy. That goes without saying. But you'd rather know you're ready, that you've seen anything you're going to see in the playoffs, have seen that in the regular season. And if you go in, with a loss or two and you're still the number 1 seed and you're healthy, like, what does that matter?
Yeah, the main question they need to answer, I think, given how last season ended, is can their defense get enough stops against another good team?
Right.
It wasn't their offense that was a problem. It was that Willingboro hung 50 points on them, and they just couldn't. And they scored 30 of their own, but they just couldn't get enough stops. So I think we know this offense is going to score. There's just too many playmakers. But are you going to get in one of those games where it's back and forth? Because when they get behind and they start having to throw the ball a lot more than they like, that really gets them out of their comfort zone. So to me, if their defense can rise up to that occasion against a very tough schedule, that'll tell you a lot about their playoff potential.
Completely agree. So we'll move on now to the Constitution Division, and this is another interesting one. And now this season it includes Manasquan, Asbury Park, Holmdel, Ocean, St. John Vianney, and Shore. So you have some Group 3s, some Group 2s, a Group 1 in Shore, and St. John Vianney, which is a non-public A, but I would not classify them as a large school.
Right.
So in that standpoint, they're even mostly in school size. I know Shore won't agree with that.
Yeah,
Head
Mark
coach Mark
Constantino
does not want to be in that
his,
division.
His opinion of
Now,
being moved up
they
into
may
this
be
division.
going down to the small school division next year. We'll touch on that later. A new addition to the Shore coming next season. But this division, again, another one. This is the division. Actually, it's funny you mentioned that before. The one I looked at, and I was trying to go through in some of the games, and I was like, this has like tri-championship written all over it. And we only had, there was only one division game to start off. It was Manasquan, 14-7 over Shore. Came out to the final minute. And I think that might be a harbinger of what this division is going to look like all year.
And I think you may look back on that game weeks from now and
That
be
might
like, that
be
was
the
a
championship
yeah,
game.
exactly. That might be a huge game to decide this. I mean, I would consider this a fairly wide open division. Manasquan certainly with a very early leg up over a good win over a good Shore team. Ocean, they lost the graduated Tyler Douglas, their superstar quarterback who was the centerpiece of their offense now at Temple. So they're a little bit of a question mark just because of all their new guys. Holmdel had one win last year. They're trying to kind of regroup after they had several solid seasons in a row. Like St. John Vianney, very young, coming off a tough loss to open the season. To me, though, how did Asbury Park get
in
put
there.
in this division?
Yeah,
like,
I don't know.
They basically got penalized for winning a share of that title last year, I felt like, because they did so well, they got moved up.
Yeah, they're tricky because their numbers are so
Low.
but they win. They're good. So it's
They might only have 24 players, but they'll beat you with those.
Exactly. Competitively, they belong in that division. Numerically, roster size, they don't. But like, do you put them in the Patriot division where it's like they might just run roughshod over those teams? That's a tough spot to be in. They're an interesting team. New head coach Marquand Mutaz, who played at Manasquan. Interesting story. Was a librarian at Keene University for around 30 years. Has been an assistant coach all over New Jersey. They have some good players coming back. Raleigh Stevens, one of them. So they should certainly be a factor in that division. I know numbers were a problem earlier, but they were confident that they would be fine once the season started, and they don't open up till this Saturday. So,
Well, I'm going to sort of disagree with you guys. I think this is an easy one.
Really?
I think after that opening day win,
It's Manasquan.
I think Manasquan is going to sort of run the table here. It's my opinion.
I would think they're a team that will get better as the season goes
Yes.
along because, like Bob and I have talked about before on others, they replaced their quarterback, their leading rusher, like their leading receiver. They have to, put a bunch of new guys in there for that offense, which means this may, they may only just continue to improve off this. But you're right. I don't think that's crazy to say Manasquan has kind of made themselves the favorite.
Interesting game, Scott and Bob. Manasquan plays Brick Memorial later in the season.
they do.
That's an interesting game.
You talk about a clash of styles.
The hard-nosed,
Yes.
slow-down Manasquan team against
Right,
the fireworks
versus the
of
fire,
Mustangs.
right.
Exactly. The team who's doing like donuts in the parking lot before the game
Yes.
starts. Metaphorically speaking, of course. Ocean's an interesting one because, like you said, they moved down from Tyler Douglas, who graduated. So their goals are the same, but their identity in terms of like where their strengths are is completely different. They're breaking a lot of new skill players, but they have an experienced offensive line led by their standout senior Nick Caruso, who's committed to Merrimack. He was a 4-year starter on the offensive line, which is rare, especially at a Group 3 school. And they expect to have a fast and physical defense. So you see something a little bit different from Ocean, and we'll see what they're made of when they open against Lacey this week. And Holmdel coming off a 1-8 season, they're really out to show like that's not us. Like it was a tough year. They had a bunch of injuries. Their head coach Jeff Rainis missed most of the season with a health scare. He's healthy, back ready to go now. So they're eager to get out there. And in that split back veer, if they get that going, like it's a pain in the neck to go against because they hit you with multiple guys. They break long touchdown runs. They've developed a trend of having 1,000-yard backs and some all-shore offensive players.
To me, this is almost like the question mark division. Like as much as the American division returned all their stars, this division is like the division where all the stars graduated, and we don't really know, who's going to emerge among this new group on all of these teams, because this is, Raleigh Stevens to me, like you said, Caruso, there's very few all shore guys back from this entire division.
Yeah.
So it's almost all new guys. So we'll see how that shakes out when, it's like a blank slate, it feels like almost. But Manasquan, yes, early statement with that win over Shore, and they could just get better. And they're Manasquan. I mean, would anybody be shocked about them winning a division title? They won like
Title
$9
Shore
million.
Conference,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, but next year they're going to get turf. Not.
Well, no, but they
I think that
solved
discussion has been going on since you were coaching
That's
in
what
like
I-
But no,
1980.
they have the turf field behind the school on Broad Street where they
Yeah,
practice all that, which is
exactly,
great.
exactly.
And they have that new field house, which is incredible. That's Vic Caboo Field will be grass.
I've
forever.
seen that little composite drawing that they put up there
Yeah,
before
every-
the town votes on it
every
like
year.
10 times over the years, and it never comes to fruition.
So it's a great football town. That really
Oh,
is. Nothing
great.
like Saturdays over
Yeah,
there.
Vic Caboo
At
Warrior
Vic Caboo
Field.
Warrior Field.
Yeah.
All right, so 3 divisions down, 4 to go. We'll take a quick break, and then we will come back and break down the Freedom Division. You are watching the Varsity Link Coaches Corner on the Shore Sports Network.
The right way to top a sub is with real red wine vinegar made from red grapes and no food coloring. And the right way to film it is in slow motion. Obviously. Because authentic ingredients make a sub above.
Yeah.
Back at Asylum Sports Center in Wall for the season debut of the Varsity Link Coaches Corner. Breaking down the divisions, we're going to call a little bit of an audible now. I said we're going to go to the Freedom Division, but we're going to start off with the Patriot Division now, and that's because we're joined live by standout Keyport senior running back and now quarterback Nazir Treadwell, coming off a huge game in a season-opening win over Manville. Pretty cool to have some live call-ins. Nazir, good to talk to you. Glad you're joining us, and a big win for you guys to open up the season.
Sir, yes, sir.
So tell me about the change, going to quarterback. And I know Scott talked to your head coach, Coach Glesman, about the change. What did you think going out there, your first game, and just running that single back offense, playing quarterback, playing running back, and having a huge 5-touchdown performance?
It was a pretty interesting change, but at the same time familiar. I always had my QB packages, and I was familiar with the read options at QB. But having to fully take on the QB role, this game, I knew it was going to be something interesting, something different. But all week I worked at it, and I was ready for it by game day.
Yeah, and I think the one thing is everyone knows you can run the ball. That's not a secret. But you were 4 for 4 passing, threw a couple touchdown passes, and even had the 80-yarder to Ford that got called back. I mean, so you must have had some confidence in your throwing arm, even though you hadn't really played quarterback before.
Yeah. I've always felt myself personally to be a pretty good thrower. That's something I feel came kind of naturally to me, and I was ready to showcase it. By the time the game came, I was working on my throwing in practice, beforehand, and perfecting, that aspect of that craft. So fully helped me take on the role.
Everyone knows, about you coming off a great, junior season and a good sophomore season before that. Was it an important game for you guys to showcase some of the other guys? Mekhi Henderson had that 96-yard touchdown. Andre Matthews, had a touchdown as well. How big was that to get some other guys involved and kind of show the rest of the teams that are going to watch you guys on tape that there's multiple weapons that defenses have to worry about?
That was something that was definitely important to us. Coming into the season, we know we had a lot of different big hitters, whether it be in the backfield or on the outsides, defensive, offensive. We know we definitely have a lot of pieces. We just had to put them in the right spots, and to be able to, showcase that in the first week, week 0 was definitely good for us because it let everybody know, like, they can't just focus on me, focus on Mike Ford. They have a lot of other stuff to focus on. So, it really keeps them on us.
Yes. No, I was just going to tell him that my first job in the Shore back in the early 70s was at Keyport High School. I coached there for about 4 years with George Conti and Richie Mosca. Enjoyed it. So I may come up and visit you.
Saturdays
this
on
year.
Jackson Street, right?
Yeah,
It's a good time.
exactly. Take that walk from the school, right? Do they have a field house there now? Do they have a field house by the field?
A field house? No, I don't think so. A field house?
No.
I don't think so.
But you have a little locker room you go to, right?
Yeah.
So you don't have to make that long walk up to the school.
Nah, yeah.
That would take the entirety of halftime.
Well,
Right.
well, have a great
now,
year.
how do you look forward to the challenge of Freehold Borough this week? I know they've been on a losing streak. They had a tough year last year, but they're a bigger school. And I think that a lot of people are looking forward to how you, as a Group 1 school, you guys are going to prove yourself against them. How do you look forward to the challenge of Freehold this weekend?
Yeah, we've versed higher group schools in the past, and we know Freehold Borough, they're very comfortable with their scheme. Their players have run their scheme for a while. They also have some pretty big hitters. So, we're just looking, install some stuff, shut their scheme down and get our scheme going, and overall, come out with the win, come out on top.
Now, do you know about Ashante Worthy? Did you know him growing up? Know about him growing up? Because Freehold did the same thing with him, where he was a star tailback. They moved him to quarterback, and he became the Shore Conference and State Player of the Year. I guess, did you know much about him as making a similar move to what he did?
I actually didn't hear much about that move on their part till recently, but that was definitely, interesting to hear that, they did the same thing we did, and, they're executing with it. So I definitely think, with them executing that on their part and us continuing to execute it on our part, it's definitely going to be a good game to see that happen.
Well, good stuff, Nazir. Hey, thanks for calling in. Thanks for watching. And, best of luck to you guys going forward. It's a great win to open the season. I'm sure you got plenty more in you.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Gotcha. That's Nazir Treadwell, the outstanding senior running back, quarterback for Key. Pretty cool to have him join in.
Holy Cross recruit.
New. Yes.
I mean, an FCS guy. It's always, you're always happy for the Group 1 guys get that scholarship to a high-level Division I football program.
Way to bring that up about Worthy, and him. Very, that'll be an interesting football game. I think it's a little step up for Keyport to play a Freehold
school. Yeah.
Yes,
I think to me it's always a question of can your offensive line match the bigger school's offensive line and be able to move the ball?
Yeah. So while we're in the Patriot division, Keyport, Manchester, Jackson Liberty, Keensburg, Lakewood, and Point Beach. So you have the small schools and then a couple schools where competitively they fit better in that division with Manchester, Jackson Liberty, and Lakewood. So you had Keyport opened up with the big win we talked about. Manchester, a real nice 34-6 non-conference win over North Plainfield. And Point Beach had a 26-6 loss to New Egypt. Manchester, second year under head coach Tommy Farrell. You're not going to find a more enthusiastic coach in the Shore who's really trying to put his stamp on the school, the football program, the community. The kids have bought in, so it's kind of cool to see what that progression's been like. Keyport, you got to stamp them as probably the favorite, I'd have to say, considering they have the best overall player in the division. I don't think that's an outlandish statement to make. And then you go on down the line, but it seems like it's always competitive, and there's some games that kind of throw you for a loop in there.
Yeah, I mean, we got a big chunk of the old B South, right? Manchester, Lakewood, Jackson Liberty. Those are schools. I think those are schools that this is an opportunity for them to get that division title, get some momentum in their program, maybe get moved back up to the higher division. So I looked at it as and Manchester's big thing. Last year they also had a good start, right? I believe they were 3-0.
They've done that a couple times.
And then they started getting into division to play and struggled a little bit. So now the question is, can you keep that momentum? It's not. I mean, let's be honest. It's not an easy place to win historically. Mm-hmm. It's been a tough place to put together winning seasons year after year. So Tommy Farrell, that's what he's trying to work towards. And this schedule and this division certainly gives him that opportunity. Keensburg, they struggled a little bit last year. They scored. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. I feel like some of these teams are Lakewood last year had a lot of really high scoring games, but just couldn't get stops on defense. So it's like an interesting mix of some lower scoring defensive type teams and then some high scoring teams that hadn't been able to get a lot of stops on defense. But you're right. I think you'd have to give Keyport the edge a little bit. But again, they're playing bigger schools. Will that matter when you play a Manchester, a Jackson Liberty?
That's going to be the division that destroys my picks like on a few weeks.
Yes.
I could just see it coming. We're like,
Right.
how did I went 0-4.
That's where Ed will make like 5 ridiculous picks and we'll be like, what is he
they'll
doing?
all-
And then he'll go 5-0 and surge
hit.
right past
That's
us.
the Ed special. Where you're like,
Hey.
what is he thinking? Then he goes like 21-1. And you're like, okay.
You know, nobody is more enthusiastic than Tom Farrell, without a doubt. I don't know if you guys saw it. I'm sure you did. But he sort of did his own Hard Knocks.
Yes.
Ah, tremendous. I mean, that's how you bring your team to the forefront.
Yeah, he's done an awesome job only, in 1 year and one game.
Exactly.
And if you're the Manchester football community and the administration, you got to be thrilled because he has made it where like, hey, I live here now. Like I'm starting a family. Like I want to be here. He strikes me as someone who will be like, I will coach football for 40 years at this school. If they let me and if we have the success, which nowadays is really rare. So
Right.
that's a cool team to see, make some strides. And like you said, trying to build consistency.
And to me, Lakewood is just always a wild card because they have talent, but they sometimes struggle with numbers and everything else. LJ Clark has been there for a while, produced a lot of great players,
such an
all shore
awesome
players.
job there,
Against really some of the most difficult circumstances in the Shore Conference of any school. So you never know when they might get on a roll and beat some teams. So yeah, that definitely an intriguing division for the small school division this year.
Now we'll go on to the Freedom Division, and this is like old for any of the wrestling fans out there. It's like a District 21. Middletown North, Southern, Howell, Jackson Memorial, Marlboro, and Lacey. Another one where it's like some of these teams don't. You have some rivals in there. Some of them you're like, those teams don't play each other often. But again, when you go down, you're like, okay, like these should all be pretty even games. You'd have to put Jackson as the favorite. Even though they graduated an all-shore player at quarterback and some other good players, they bring back almost everyone on defense. They're
Very
a
good
top 10
secondary.
team perennially. Yeah, an awesome secondary, a playoff team last year, and like a program that gets the benefit of the doubt. Like what you're going to get from them pretty much on a yearly basis. So I'd have them as the favorite. Marlboro was a playoff team last year, trying to repeat and sustain some success. What do you think?
Yeah, Middletown North, I thought, coming right out and putting 45 on Freehold Township. I looked it up. I mean, that's the most points Middletown North has scored in 10 years. So they have an offense with 2 good running backs, Nino Morganacker and Shane Volante, who both went over 100 yards in that win. Luke Sheehan, their quarterback, is back. We'll find out a lot more about them against Brick Memorial this week. But
bring a spare calculator.
Southern, nice win.
Right.
And always good. Nobody hears about them way down south, down there in Manahawkin.
Southern is such a wild card for me because they've been okay. It's been like 5-5, 4-5, like just haven't been able to break through.
But like they rose up and stunned Long Branch last year. They'll come out of nowhere with a win.
And they have some really good players. Like Armando Sanchez is one of the better defensive players, one of the more underrated defensive, I should say. And then Cole Kramer, went off with all these had an 80-yard kickoff. I think it was an 86-yard kickoff return touchdown, an 80-yard touchdown run, and a 65-yard touchdown catch. So, yeah, they've proven over the last couple of years they can put together some games and beat you. For them, again, like a lot of these teams, it's about consistency.
Right.
What can they do on a week-to-week basis? Howell was 5-5 last year and bring back some pieces. Egan Numb's a quarterback. Brandon Wright, running back. Kevin Maloney, one of the most consistently productive receivers the last 2 years.
Has Marlboro turned the corner, with their program?
That's the question. And they
have to be consistent.
I just posted their preview today, and they've never had 3 winning seasons in a row. So they're going for that this year. Last season, playoff team, first playoff win, first of a lot of things since the 90s. Now it's, can we continue this run? And that's the question, and that's what you want to do, building a program. Matt Cassidy, we mentioned before, they have him back as an all-shore running back / linebacker, some other key players. It was a senior-heavy team, so they're going to have to show that the new guys can come in and they can hit the ground running in week 1. And then, Middletown, I think we mentioned, Lacey, Lacey, to me, a little bit of an unknown. They had a non-conference, loss to Absegami. We'll know more when they start playing our conference teams.
Right. They play Ocean this week, which is also a little bit of an unknown. So I think that'll be a game that you'll start to find out more about. Because it's hard to judge when you're like, is it just because Absegami's a really tough team and going to be really good this year? Or, what can you take away from that game? It's hard to tell because we don't know those teams from down there as well.
Of course, Lou Versillo, the longevity coach, right?
The only coach in Lacey history, which is,
Right.
that's a school that opened in 1980. Right, you're not saying that was Brick Moral.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
80, I think.
1981, 82,
Yeah.
something in there. So, yeah, you have a veteran coach, a Hall of Fame coach. It was won over 300 games. So
Yeah.
they know how to win down there. We'll see
He's
how-
to the point where he's like coaching the sons of his like original players.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
he's like multiple
Or
generations.
or
of
in
the
some
same
cases,
family.
grand.
Yeah, let's say we might be on to the grandsons by now.
Really an incredible string of longevity.
Yeah.
So that's the Freedom Division. Independence Division, Brick Memorial, Brick, Freehold Borough, Freehold Township, Barnegat, and Matawan. So you have two in-town rivals, and then two schools that are almost the farthest apart from each other in the Shore and Barnegat, Matawan. So that is a division that doesn't seem to match up geographically, at least, but competitively, again, seems to be pretty even. We talked about Brick Memorial having the big opening season win. What stands out to you when you look at the teams in there based off what they did last year and what you think could
Well, I would have thought right off the bat Matawan, just because of all the guys they got. Martinez back at quarterback, Palumbo, 1,000-yard rusher back. Jaden Elijah, one of the top recruits in the country at this point, just got offered by Georgia, their lineman. But then they come out and lose 42-0 to Cedar Creek at the Battle of the Beach. That was a little bit of an eye opener to me of like, maybe not that they lost, but like that they didn't score and that like they struggled. I mean, I hope for their sake it was just one of these week 0 games, like Ed said. You didn't have a lot of time to prepare. It was almost like a glorified scrimmage to some degree. It didn't go well. But the problem is now you got to come back and play Rumson this week. But as far as this division is concerned, you got to think them and Brick Memorial would be the two teams you would think would probably fight it out, with Brick wanting to have their say too.
Well, exactly, because Brick has had Brick Memorial's number forever. They
Correct.
own a large advantage in that all-time series. They beat Brick Memorial last year on the final day of the regular season when Brick Memorial needed the win to have a chance at the playoffs. So they don't. They go into that Brick Memorial game every year going, we're going to win this thing. So they're listening to us going, no, it's us and Madeline.
Right.
And they have every right to say that. So this is one of those divisions where you can pick. The favorites seem clear, but I feel like a lot of wild things can happen in this division to where an unexpected team wins the title or you have a shared title between two or three
Yeah, I
teams.
mean, Freehold's coming off a winless season. Most of the games were lopsided. They did have a close game in their final game against Howell. And from everything I've heard, they look much better in this preseason, like in their scrimmages. So they are a little bit, who knows, like if they can throw a wrench into things. Barnegat, I think, is taking a step up in competition.
Yes.
But, I mean, they were right there in the mix for a division title last year, but JoJo Bivens right there, all-time leading rusher, graduated. They scored 6 points in their season opener, 7-6 loss to Monmouth. So to me, their offense has to show, like, can we score without Bivens against teams like this? But, to me, I mean, that Matawan Brick Memorial game, as far as like filled with stars and
Should
some
be a
of
good one.
all-shore playmakers and excitement. And I think Brick is more like our defense thinks we can slow down some of these teams that have these big names and win that way.
And Brick has one of the more underrated, really good all-shore level two-way players in their senior Jake Toy.
Yep.
He plays H-back for them, which is that's not a position you see on every team, but he's like a true H-back. He took some shots in single back where it's just him. He had like I think 4 or 5 catches at tight end. He'll just get straight handoffs as a
tremendous
tailback.
defensive
And
player.
he's a really good defensive player. So, they're a team that is always going to feel like they're going to be in the mix, and they usually are.
And we have Freehold Township, who had a tough loss to Middletown. And Township, getting back to Ed's earlier point, the transfer bug got them pretty good.
You feel for them.
I mean, Chase Enlow, who looked like a budding star at running back, he left and went to Hun School. And then
As did Sean Corchado, who's been a really good
another
receiver
mainstay.
for them for the last 2 years.
So they were trying to, rebuild the offense a little bit or, adjust it without him. And they were tied with Middletown North at halftime. So they certainly have that
21-21.
potential. But yeah, I think Brick Memorial has had all the stats the last couple of years and the offensive numbers and all that greatness, but they haven't had the wins and the championships to go with it. This is their chance this year to do that.
And a lot of it does fall on the defense because they're going to score points, but can they win a game where they're playing a good defense and their offense can't put up 30-plus points, and Connor Dietz isn't going to go for 300-plus yards by himself? That's the question that Brick Memorial needs to answer. If they answer that, they could have a really successful season and make a playoff run, because if that defense is shored up, like, that's not a team you want to play in the playoffs when you know you have a quarterback you're facing that can completely take over the game and ruin it. We've seen how many teams have we seen do that over the years. Right. So
they've got a couple good defensive players too. Trey Talmadge was only a sophomore linebacker, very good, and Marabou, who plays in the secondary now. Good little athlete. So they've got some defensive players, just got to put it together, like you said.
Cohesively, right. It's got to show in the numbers. So that's the Independence Division. Last one, the Liberty Division, Central Regional, Monmouth Regional, Neptune, Pinelands, Toms River South, and Toms River East. Only one team in this division had a winning record last season. That's Pinelands. So to me, the Wildcats are the obvious favorite. But as just pencil them in,
it's just kind of strange because Pinelands has only won one division title in their history, and it was in 1987. But now we're going into a season saying they're the favorite. But they did win 7 games last year. So you have to say that when no one else in this division won more than 3. But I think, as we saw in the opening week, Central, I think, is going to be a lot better than they were last year. They only had 1 win. Chase Gumbrecht got hurt in that first game, and the season kind of spiraled out because they had built so much around him. But they got serious playmakers, Division I guys on that team. So I think Central will be right there in the mix. Monmouth picked up a win in their first game. It's strange saying Pinelands, because that's not a role they normally have to deal with as being the favorite and having like the target on their back. But that shows what John Tierney's been able to do there. And they have some good guys back this year.
They do. They return a good amount. They graduated an all-shore, second-team all-shore defensive lineman, Mike Hall, who was awesome for them last year. Like over 100 tackles as a defensive end, up there in sacks, tackles for loss, all that. He graduated along with a couple other players. Their quarterback, Ryan Allen, who played in the all-shore game, but they bring back a 1,000-yard running back in Jamin Parkinson. A really good tackler in their secondary, Liam Villinger, who was 3rd in the shore in tackles last season. Has been doing that since he came on the field. And then they have Jaden Hadsovich, who is an offensive lineman who's had some FCS, FBS interest, who's another big, 6'5", pushing 300-pound guy. Him and Anthony Aguano on the right side. So they have a formula. They're going to run the I formation. They're going to pound it, and they're going to try to go play action, play tough defense. It's a tried and true method, and it worked really well for them last season. If they can do it again, they're going to have a really good year. I think them and Central, right now at least, looks like it's a game. 2 schools are kind of similar size, old B-South rivals. I think that's a game to watch.
Interesting little controversy over the winter with the Toms River, the inner Toms River circle, with East and South having to play Toms River North. Okay, I know there were some who wanted to play, some didn't want to play, and because of playoff implications, and you could put your thoughts on who was who, but they ended up obviously playing.
Well, what's your opinion? Do you think they should play every year regardless?
No, I do not. I mean, in a situation like this, North comes off of a big win against Millville. They have to play Toms River East this week.
It's like, I understand it's a game where there's some people in the community that just want to see it, but
exactly,
that doesn't benefit any of the team.
No,
like East, I think it was 70-0 or 70-6 last season.
Yeah,
nobody wins in that regard. No. So that's a tough one. East and South though, like that'll be a good one. Game.
That'll be a good one.
That happens in that district. So you usually have that one team. It hasn't usually happened to this degree. We have that one team that is better and 2 other teams that are kind of similar. It's been rare that all 3 of them are.
But again, I also look at like this division as an opportunity for those teams. They're trying to like get some momentum again and like rebuild the programs a little bit. Like there's winnable games in this division. Like you can make some headway. So I think that this is an opportunity for those 2 teams to kind of turn things around. And Monmouth has had some success in recent years. I know
big
they
win
struggled a little bit
opening
last year.
day.
Yeah, but I think this division is just it's not totally wide open, but it's not like this is another one you joke about the picks from week to week where you're going to go, this is really hard. Like these teams are so even. And we haven't even talked about Neptune. I mean, this is one of the proud programs of the Shore Conference. They just need stability. They've had a different head coach like every year, almost like 4 of the last 5 years or something. Mike Sieber's there. He's a Neptune guy. He was on the staff when Mark Ciccatelli was there and they won state titles. So he knows what it's like to be part of like that championship constructed team.
That's another school that keeping your own players.
I mean, how many Neptune guys have popped up as stars on other people's rosters? You know, so I think that it becomes a catch-22. Well, they're not going to Neptune because they're not winning games. Well, we're not winning games because they're not coming to Neptune. So I think that is a tricky situation. But yeah, this is an opportunity for them. Get some wins, get some momentum, get back to being a winning team, and then you retain your guys, and then all of a sudden maybe you're the old Neptune pretty soon.
Well, we've gone over the time a little bit, but look, it's week 0 for us too. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. We'll talk about Varsity Link and some of the new things they have going on, and then we'll quickly get to some of the headline games from week 1. So quick break, and then we'll be back with that. You are watching the Varsity Link Coaches Corner on the Shore Sports Network.
Getting that perfect slice is satisfying, fulfilling, and rewarding too. But we don't do it for fun. We do it for fresh. Slice to order makes a sub above.
Back at Asylum Sports Center in Walls, we get ready to wrap up the 2023 season debut of the Varsity Link Coaches Corner. With that, we're going to talk about Varsity Link. It's the athletes' social media network. What does that mean? Well, we'll ask one of the guys who knows best, Jason Wamba from Asylum Sports Center and Varsity Link. So you guys have been around for a couple years now.
Yes, sir.
Been building, really doing a good job. What are some of the new things you guys are excited about? And just tell us what you guys are hoping to bring to Varsity Link this season and beyond.
Yeah, well, right now we're working on, we've pushed out team pages where coaches can go on there, add their rosters, they can put their events in, right? They can push out schedules to their teams. It's a communication page basically for your entire team to get on there and see what's going on. It's a database. Let's say you got game day tomorrow, you put out your schedule for game day, you add your players on there, all your kids can see that rather than relying on the whiteboard, all the kids getting in there. It's blasted out. It's similar to like a spawn or a team app. It's all pushed into one area in one respective place.
It seems like a great organizational tool, and also like the social media aspect of it. It's like the LinkedIn for high school athletics or for college athletes, or it's a place to interact, but also it's a professional place where college coaches want to go in. We're going to have to filter through your Instagram, your Twitter account, your TikTok.
It's all going to be in one place. That's right. Yeah, it's all going to be put in one place. And once we're turning around right now. We're pushing out stats. We're starting to work with some organizations and teams where we're pulling stats and being able to upload them. So now teams and colleges and organizations can have tracking of all that stuff all in one place. So it's really exciting. I know we're in year 3 now. Each year we're one step closer. We're continuing to gain user bases. So continue to get on there, log in, check it out. If you have questions, give us a call, shoot us a message, whatever it may be. But continue to use it and check it out. It's a great app.
For sure. Anywhere you download your app, so the App Store, the Google Play Store, for most of us. Jay, also an assistant coach at Ocean. You guys open up this weekend.
Yes, sir.
How excited are you guys to hit the field? You had so many teams open up week 0. I'm sure it's not that bad to get the extra week, but I'm sure some of these guys are itching to get out there and hit somebody.
We're really excited. We're really eager as well. We're home tomorrow night against Lacey Township. Our guys are geared up. We're ready to go. I just left practice. I ran over, shot over here. We just got done with the hog dinner. It's a big tradition in Ocean Township. So for some of you guys that know about that, it's our Thursday night dinner. Thursday night dinner before Friday night game. Wednesday for us this week, but we're really excited to get on the field tomorrow night.
Now, is that the hog dinner? Is that just the hogs?
What was the menu?
That was my initial reaction.
That was the
like,
important question.
When I first came to the Ocean, I was like, "Is this just for the old linemen? Because I'm down. We're good. we get after it." It's a whole team dinner. Parents do a great job. They really put in a lot of effort for the kids there in Ocean Township.
Special part of high school football. Yeah, like we always talk about when we have the kids on, the pasta parties.
Pasta parties.
Those kinds of team bonding moments. Like the wins and losses, you remember all those stuff, but like those things are super important. I'm sure you remember them. I know I do, and all of us. So what's that like when you kind of have those team bonding moments, especially before the first game of the season where the anticipation is so great?
I think like you said, like the anticipation, it kind of brings it down a little bit, lets the kids kind of be kids, enjoy the environment with each other, and then kick off on Friday night or Thursday night, and they're ready to go, locked in.
Big Red territory. I happened
OTF.
to be there the other day watching a field hockey scrimmage on the football field, and brought back some memories of me and Coach Conti coaching together.
Oh, I love it.
That's
great.
been everywhere.
I'm sure we'll see
I
him
spread
tomorrow.
he'll be there. He'll be on the sideline,
Yep.
second guessing all the coaches. No,
Jay-
Jory, big time, Big Red fan.
Yes, sir.
Well, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Best of luck to you guys at Ocean, and certainly excited to see what Varsity Link has in store today and in the future.
Absolutely. Go download.
That's Jason Wambaugh from Varsity Link. So now we're just going to roll right into what to look for in week one. We dive in now after this week. Everyone will have played a game, an exclusively non-divisional and non-conference slate. We talk about some of the Brickmore, Middletown North, Manalapan visiting Jackson, some good Lacey Ocean, as we just talked with Jay. Some interesting games on the radar. What intrigues you the most, and where are you thinking about going this weekend?
Well, I know you're saying you're going to Manalapan Jackson. That's always a good game. They either scrimmage or play each other like every year. It's always a physical game. Jackson beat Manalapan last year 10-7, knocked them out of the state playoffs. So obviously the Braves are going to be looking for a little revenge. And come on, who doesn't love football in the jungle?
Yeah.
Although I know you were talking about getting attacked by all the flies at the swamp.
Might not.
The jungle, I think they're more the size of like bats. They may just pick you up and like fly you off into the woods.
I was joking with Scott. I'm going to show up with the full beekeeper suit just to make sure I don't get attacked.
But the atmosphere at the jungle is always a great time. A game I'm going to be going to on Friday night, just because it intrigues me a lot, is Donovan Catholic at home against Long Branch, both coming off real solid wins. Both, some star-studded rosters there. It's a non-division game, but I think it's a great test for Long Branch. Donovan Catholic's schedule is relentless. Yes. St. Augustine and Long Branch outside your division. I believe they also might play Red Bank. So, they have
They play St. Joe's Montvale.
Yeah,
also.
yeah.
So,
they have no let-up all year. So I'm interested to see, Michael Thomas, Najee Calhoun, all those guys. So that's another game. And then, your alma mater, bring some extra bulbs for the scoreboard at Brick Memorial
Ed'll be
on
there,
Friday
too.
night.
I'll be there sitting in the end zone.
What are you looking for in that game, Brickmore, Middletown North?
Well, somebody's defense has to step
Yeah.
up. As you said, Memorial put up 51, North put up 45. What defense is going to stop the other team's offense?
And
turnovers, I think, could be huge. You get a pick or a fumble and get that extra possession and deny the other one a possession. That could be the difference in that game.
And ironically, both those teams' defenses played great in the second half of their games. Brickmore was losing at halftime.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Allentown scored at all after that.
No,
and
25
Middletown,
at halftime.
Exactly. And Middletown shut out Freehold Township in the second half. So while they did give up points in the 20s, they're probably both feeling pretty good about the way they regrouped in the second half. So that'll be interesting to see that play out. And also, the two games I'm recovering, I'm going to go from a game that's potentially really low scoring to one where I might run out of ink and have to bring the third.
Another game, though, that stuck out to me that in the preseason you would have thought, oh, this is another great rivalry that's being renewed, is Rumson and Matawan.
Yeah.
They played some tremendous state championship games there, 2010, 2011. But then after the Matawan lost to Cedar Creek, I think people are wondering, okay, is this still a big game? If not, I mean, it's at Rumson, so that's tough for Matawan to have to go in there and win a game. But the question for them is, okay, was that an aberration last week? Or, Rumson looked really good, but that to me was a game like me might have circled before the season, but then now you're like, I'm not 100% sure about it. So I think Matawan has something to prove in that game.
Saturday, Point Borough at Manasquan. That's a big one. And then Friday night, Central at Southern. Who's for real?
And that's a rivalry game,
great
too.
rivalry.
Right next to each other. Yep.
Yeah, I think
And
that game, I think the Central Southern game, I feel like that's a game on Friday night when I'm checking on Twitter or going back to write the recap. It might be like, whoa, like this was one of those, and we've seen it a lot with them. Going back to when Central had Mike Bickford, they played some wild back and forth games that have been high scoring or have come down to a play at the end or some kind of crazy play, a fumble return, a kickoff. Like that game seems to have it all.
And again, that's one of those games they want to keep on the schedule. Like they might not be in the same division, but those schools, you talk to them, both sides are very eager to keep that intact. That was their Thanksgiving game for years. And that's the thing. Like, even though Thanksgiving's kind of barely non-existent for games anymore, you'd like to still see those rivalry games. My idea, obviously, was to move them all to the state playoff cutoff weekend, where you had to go through your rival if you want to get into the playoffs. You want to get a better seed. You better beat the team that you can't stand, that you'll be talking about in 20 years, whether you won that game or not. So I'm happy they kept that game. And kept that rivalry intact. And Point Borough Manasquan, another tremendous rivalry. And two just so far polar opposite teams. A defensive low-scoring team against a pyrotechnic offensive team.
Very true.
And we can't leave tonight without telling our listeners where KIPP Academy is.
Ed has stumped,
Get the phone, start Googling
me.
If anybody knows, call in.
The one
Shore
bit
Regional plays them, by the way, this week.
The one bit of news we did want to mention, and we teased it before, New Egypt, which is located in Ocean County at Plumstead Township, west of Jackson. If you don't know, I'm sure there's a lot of people who probably don't know in the Shore. I think we take that for granted.
When you're going past Great Adventure,
Yeah.
They will be joining the Shore Conference starting with next scholastic year, so the 2024-2025 year. It seems like a perfect match. It's a small Group 1 school. It gives our Group 1 schools, the current ones, more options to play against. It's good for New Egypt too, not just in football, but in all sports. So that just seemed like a home run and a no-brainer for both.
And their coach is excited, Steve Fence, because he's a longtime Shore guy. He was an assistant at Manchester for 15 years, and then at Barnegat for 2 years before he got the head job at New Egypt, where he's been for 8 years. And his son Brady is a starting offensive lineman for Pinelands. So a lot of Shore connections for him. And I think, I spoke to him and he said they play in that West Jersey Football League, which has 94 teams or something. So your schedule rotates so much. You don't have any continuity. You don't play the same teams. You don't build any rivalries. And now these Group 1 schools in the Shore are always looking for more games against comparable sized teams like the Keensburg and Keyport and Shore and all them. So this slots right in with that. And one thing I didn't even realize, he was telling me in their other sports, because this is for all sports, not just football, they didn't play in any tournament other than the state tournament. They didn't have a county tournament, and they weren't in a conferce. So in their other sports, they only played in the state tournament, and that was it, which seemed very strange.
That is odd.
So safe to say they won't be in the American next year?
Well, I don't know if they win too many games this year. They
might be.
Get moved in there.
You guys are too funny. I was going to ask for final thoughts, but that's about as good as we're going to get there. So, good first episode. Great to be back talking Shore Conference football on the Varsity Link Coaches Corner. Good luck to all the teams beginning their season this week, and especially to the seniors. The last go around for you. It's the last first game of high school you're ever going to have. So cherish it. Good luck. Hopefully everyone stays healthy throughout the season, and we have some great games to cover. So for Scott Stump and Ed Sarluca, I'm Bob Batters. Thanks for watching the Varsity Link Coaches Corner on the Shore Sports Network, and we'll see you again next week.